Hey, everyone, welcome back to BRAP. It's Wednesday, May the 21st. Well, I don't think it's Wednesday where this gentleman is. I believe it's in the future, a day or so. Falky,
Absolutely.
how's Thursday looking?
Bleak and miserable at the moment. We've got a bit of
Oh, yeah,
cloud, a
here
bit of
too.
rain. It's
Here
bloody
too.
cold here now. No, it's otherwise, yeah, we made it to Thursday. Place is still as crazy as it was yesterday, but we're here. So that means something.
Yeah, no, that's good. Mankind has lived another day. That's good. If I don't see you, Falky, I'm concerned. Something catastrophic has happened, probably. Like I
Yeah,
might some zombie apocalypse, or
I
maybe
suppose
the
to give
cordyceps have taken over mankind.
oh yeah, to give a bit of a peek behind the curtain to those who are listening, occasionally I'll just get this random note if I haven't spoken to Rap for a few days, or just message me, go, "Are you still there? Are we still here? What's going on?"
Yeah, exactly. Like what is happening with the world? But no, great to have you back on. And we've been doing Friday night shows, but I can't do the Friday night show this week. Actually, I may have to switch back to Wednesday, believe it or not, because Fridays are becoming a little crazy with activities and such.
Mm.
So but anyhow, great to have you here, Falky. Great to see that we made it to a Thursday, that we managed to blow ourselves up. I say we, I
Yep.
mean mankind, with the tension and the turmoil in the globe.
Through
I
no
tell
lack
you,
of trying.
Falky, I get let me, and not to get into politics, Falky, or finance. Well, we'll get into finance a little bit, but it's interesting. The company I work for, I think you know who I work for.
Yes.
But it's interesting. What's happening here in the U.S., the kind of back and forth as relates to tariffs, has made it a bit confusing, and a bit like our clients are very cautious about 2026 because they don't know what's going to happen.
Mm.
It is the constant tug of war. The 150% tariffs, 40% tariffs, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That back and forth, that uncertainty is really kind of throwing a wrench into how our clients are forecasting, how we're forecasting, because we just don't know. It's interesting. Clients that I've heard in some instances may not agree with certain economic policies, but at least those policies were predictable.
Yes.
And so this back and forth, the uncertainty, it is, I fear, Falky, and I've been meaning to talk to you about this. I fear that we may be plunging ourselves to our own doing into a recession, possibly. And that's concerning because I think we've been okay since the Great Recession, more or less. That's not to say everyone here has been okay. I understand there's people that um,
Yeah.
we're still feeling the impacts of inflation. Um, but I think that part of the economic growth that didn't really help inflation either. People
No.
are still spending money, and when you have like those things can't really coexist, right? Inflation
Yeah.
and thriving economy, because then how do you temper down spending and things like that, and money into the economy and whatnot? So
Yeah. Well, that's
it's just
always
an
a challenge, isn't
interesting
it?
thing that I learned this week at work. So I wanted to share that with you, Falky. And what do you think, sir? I mean, again, know that people aren't here to listen to finance or economics, but I find this stuff fascinating because it does impact the hobby that we love, gaming. I mean, gaming is
Yeah.
not immune to the like as logical, I say, the rules and laws of economics.
Exactly. In case in point, with some of the things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, the challenge here is where there's turmoil. Um, there'll always be an opportunity to lose and an opportunity to win. So it's always a two-sided affair. Remember when the first round of tariffs, the big board was brought out, and those stupidly high, like, just listed nearly every country the US did, and said these are all the tariffs they're going to cop, and markets just took a nosedive because they knew they were coming. They didn't think they were going to be that big, and ever since then, that was like not even 2 months ago. Markets have returned, like, have turned around and gone to be better than they were at that point. So yes, there's been a drop off, but it's corrected itself in a very short period of time. But those that were smart and bought everything when it hit the bottom have now made a crap load of money at the expense of those who chose not to do anything. But those who chose not to do anything are effectively no worse off than they were 3 months ago. So, and what that does with the whole, recession, um, what is it, stagflation, and all those other terminologies that the news love to throw around but never explain them. It's almost like they just got to sit back and hold on and well, I shouldn't say continue about your day. Just it'll go up and down like a yo-yo, and then it will level itself out. But the indicators for bond yield curves are a great indicator for whether you're going to have a recession or not. And at the moment, the bond yield curves are trending in a different direction. Inflation's coming off. What's happening in a lot of countries outside of the US with the US decisions is it's helping them actually get their interest rates down faster, to sort that out. FX rates are being less volatile. Things are starting to come back to a level of normality, and it's almost like the hitting the reset button to a degree after you've had a heap of like it's the horse bolted, you've yanked on the reins and stopped it, and now you're trying to just get it to go again without it taking off again. So it's sort of this really odd balance of, things got stupidly expensive, and then the rest is trying to catch up. But the challenge, as it always has been, and I said this years ago on this show, the problem is not demand. The problem has always been supply. And if you listen to the economic experts talking now, they keep talking about interest rates don't have as much impact on supply-driven inflation, and trying to get a handle on supply-driven inflation. It's still got a supply-driven inflation issue, but it's not as much of a problem. So the risk of going into a recession, because it's supply not demand, is, we shouldn't say limited, but the impact is not as bad as what you end up in a demand-driven recession. Because best way to explain it without carrying on is, if you've got a issue with housing and there's not enough housing because the demand is too great, well, you just increase interest rates and the demand comes off. But if you haven't got enough housing because you can't build them fast enough, or you can't get enough into that market space, it doesn't matter how high you crank the interest rates, the demand is not going to wane because you haven't met the minimum amount that you need. So the only way to do that is to crank more houses into the marketplace. So you got to build them. You got to build them quick, and you got to build them en masse in big numbers. You can't just trickle it in. But if you do that, then you shake the foundation on the housing market, the prices don't stay up, and then everybody in the last 6 months who just bought at a massively inflated price and who's got debt to the eyeballs to try and buy one, the house price drops off. So then they'll default on their loans and they'll have to sell the houses, and then that puts pressure on the rental market. And then you've just exacerbated the problem of supply into the housing market, and the banks or the money lenders will get the shits because their underlying security value is dropping off at a rate that they weren't prepared for. So it's the supply side balance is a lot more tricky to get it without inadvertently causing a massive crash. And most OECD countries do not want to go down that pathway of let's just crank supply in, because, as I've said on this show, 2.5 years ago, we're talking about when the PS5 was having its issues. You don't want to crank up supply to force it into a marketplace where all of a sudden the value of what you're putting in there is deteriorating because you're putting more into it. It's a downward spiral, and it's very tricky to balance that. So, and that's the issue across a lot of different parts across the world, is that food supplies are being tested by dry conditions and environmental conditions, and money supply is being tested by different conditions, and you've got all this trade supply being tested by different conditions. Some of them are manufactured, some are just natural, but you've got these. It's mostly supply side that's the problem. Energy supply, massive problem. Um, Labor and personnel supply, as you would know, massive problem in a lot of areas because people just don't want to move. So, yeah, I mean, sorry to carry on a bit into the detail, but that's where it's sort of sitting at the moment. Yeah, it's not saying that we're going to have this massive fall off, but at the same time, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for probably the next 6 to 12 months. So I can appreciate why a lot of your clients are looking at 2026, scratching their head, going, "Yeah, what are we going to do?"
Yeah, I mean it's I know our hiring forecast is going down because we just don't know, we don't know what's going to happen. There's no it, it just seems like the plan changes daily, right?
Hmm.
So and so trying to wrap your head around that and trying to gauge how your clients will react. It just it's a bit, it's like it's a head scratcher. And that concerns me at least a little bit because anytime we see, anytime we're not hiring to support engagements, that means that our clients aren't spending money. They aren't making investments in technology, infrastructure, things like that. You know, and that's kind of where discretionary spending is probably where I shouldn't say where we make a lot of our money, but I think it's a big chunk of that, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see, I guess, what happens the next 6 to 12 months. Um,
Well, the
but
PMI is
speaking,
still, sorry, the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index, which is a great indicator of problems coming. It's the US PMI is still sitting under 50. So anything over 50 suggests that you're doing really well, and anything under 50 suggests that things are going bad. So it's dipped under 50, um, and it went under 50 back in February. Sorry, in March it was at 49. Now it's at 48.7, but it's leveling out. Whereas at the back end of last year, when leading into election, like the election cycle in the US, it was down in the 46, 45, and it was looking horrible. But it's had a good bounce back since January. Um, but again, like these are indicators that, if you get 2 quarters, full quarters of negative PMI, or the PMI is under 50, that's a great indicator to say 3 to 6 months after that, the economy is going to take a nosedive.
don't tell me that, Falky. Now,
But
I
it's still got
oh man,
4 months to go of negative of being under 50. But
I
you never
don't.
know. He could come out tomorrow, make some announcement, all of a sudden the thing takes off again.
I loathe recessions. I just not, I survived the Great Recession. I just not a fan of recessions, but I don't think anyone
No, they're
is.
not
But
fun. They're not fun.
no,
Anyway,
they're
we'll
not.
move on
But
from
anyhow,
economics. We'll be here all day.
but with economics, so it's interesting. Sony's talked about, hey, we might actually raise the price of PlayStations now, for tariffs,
What?
and
Did, sorry, keep going.
yeah. So I can't say I'm not I'm not surprised by that they would do something like that. Um, what are your thoughts on that, Falky? Because
Well,
it's actually caused me to think about maybe upgrading a PS5 Pro before there's any
yeah.
increase
So
in price.
the crazy thing about this, right, is that they've increased since they launched it. It's had 3 increases and 1 decrease, and it's had 2 or 3 sale events, right, where they've dropped the price off a bit. The latest round of price increases announced by PlayStation, which was back in February, I think. Um, we didn't feel it down here until the 1st of May because the stock movement was happening so slowly. But in terms of them having to raise their price for the tariff stuff, coming from the OEM, that's a joke. So anyone who's buying into the whole we will need to raise our prices, blah blah blah, and all the rest of it is is misunderstanding what the problem is. The problem that they're facing is for them to move the manufacturing into the US to avoid some of those sanctions. Um, for where they're assembling it, and now it's whether the tariffs will apply to every individual part coming in, or whether it's they can assemble it in the US and then sell it without the tariff input. It would have to be Sony assembling it, but you're not necessarily buying it directly from them. You also get the opportunity to buy it from Walmart and Best Buy and GameStop and all the rest of them, right? So there's different points at where this thing would kick in and who would have to pay it. But don't forget that Sony's also got chip manufacturing plants coming online where they could move the manufacturing of the same chips out of China and into somewhere else. But by doing that, they're going to increase the cost of that material, those components. So they'll have no choice but to do a price rise if they want to maintain these levels of margin. So it's it's a byproduct of what would happen. But to just say, oh, they're going to have to raise it because of the tariffs. Well, it's not the tariff that's causing the price rise directly onto the console. It's way back up the production chain, which is where this thing could happen. And the further upstream or up the pipeline you get with the production chain, the more it compounds by the time it gets to the end, because everybody who's touching it's putting their margin on it. So it would actually be more beneficial if they just said completed product assembled in the US, off you go, and we'll put you 10% on it because it's a Japanese company. Fine. That would be much better than 200 and something percent on every component back at the start of the production cycle before the thing's even welded together on a chip circuit board, because that'll just have a flow-on effect that gets compounded by every time it shifts from one to the next to the next to the next. They're adding 30, 40, 50% margins onto this stuff. So that's my perspective of it, or a perspective that I have on it. Vietnam come to the party and get the 0% deficit trade both ways, or no deficit trade both ways, well, then the PlayStation to get them into the US, they'll just take all the ones assembled in Vietnam and send them straight to the US, and then Australia and others will get the uplift from the Chinese manufactured ones or the Indian manufactured ones, and go from there. So you look in their financials and their forecasting for the year ahead, and they've indicated, like Japan, the Sony has in their financials indicated that they don't think that the tariffs are going to have a material impact to their outcome in their forecast at all. So for those that are making the commentary and saying that, they're going to have to raise price, they're going to have to do this, they're going to do that. Well, it's completely dependent on what certain persons decide they want to do and how Sony reacts to it. But Sony seems to feel that they've got all their bases covered and it will have a non-material impact.
Falky, so I was hoping to have you on the show a couple weeks ago too, because as we know, Xbox increased the price of their hardware. And that was really a head scratcher for me, because I don't understand that. I know they cited increased costs, paraphrasing, costs of doing business or whatever. What did you think about that? Like, what was when you saw that they were increasing the price, what do you think's driving that price increase?
The deterioration of the Chinese yuan to US dollar for their manufacturing is a great starting point. If this is their response to the tariff circumstance and trying to ward off against that, then it's a nonsensible one to do, but it is an option. But it doesn't help, because the higher you crank your prices up, the higher the tariff is going to be going back to whoever's eating the tariff. It's a strange one. I get the sense, from what I can understand and what I can see and what I've scratched around and found, is that they've got they've wound their production right back to bare minimum, and now they're at this level where you can't get the discounts for mass production, because you're not making those massive production runs. So all of a sudden you get down to a point where you've got to start paying, like the cost of doing these production runs is actually more than what blowing more losses into these units.
So Falky, so basically you're not benefiting from buying in mass, buying the economies of scale is not working in your favor, basically.
Yeah. So if you're, what did they do last year? I can't even remember what the console sales count was. It was like 75% Series S, 25% Series X. They've done these upgraded ones with the bigger storages and all the rest of it. But because they've got so many SKUs and they're not running out, they're not doing like Sony does, a 6 million unit run over a space of a few weeks or 5 or 6 weeks. They'll run out 6 million PS5s or whatever it is, package them up, send them around the world, and off they go. That componentry, all that stuff from thin air to a finished product, has to come through a manufacturing plant somewhere. And the manufacturing plants aren't just making the chips for the PS5. They'll make chips for everything. They've got production runs and things lined up 6, 9, 12 months in advance. So to do these production runs, you've got to have your window and you've got to pay for your window. And obviously running these facilities costs a crap load of money. So the more they can pump out in a week, the cheaper the actual unit itself is, because you've got the fixed cost overheads sitting there to run the facility, and the variable cost is just the components going in. So if you have less components going in, obviously you've got less variable cost, but you still got this big facility for the week. You booked it for the week, you paid for it for the week, or by the week or hour, however they do these runs these days. And so what they've got is they've got less and less and less and less going out the door, but they've still got to manufacture these things, or they're still choosing to manufacture them. So now they've got to pay for those windows that they booked 12, 16, 18 months ago, and realizing, crap, we don't actually need 6 weeks because we don't need to do an 8 million unit run. We only need 1 week because we only got to do a 2 million unit run, or we're doing 1 million units, or we're only doing enough units to cover off on our summer sales event that's going to happen at the end of June in the US or something like that. All of a sudden, these things are costing a lot more per unit because you got less units there. So unless you want to run them at a massive loss, and Satcher has come out, Amy Hood came out and said, we're running Xbox as profitable, or we're seeking to make it profitable, not make it a big money pit out the back anymore. Well, what were they going to do? There's only a certain amount of loss margin you can take on the hardware, because the software is not backfilling that hole. They've had the price rise on everything hardware related, and there was a price rise either has happened or is going to happen with Game Pass, and they're now they're not giving it away for free as much as they were on PC. And you've got some other component parts of the business that are trying to backfill that hole. That's why we've got games coming at a regular cadence to other platforms. That's why they're now laying off another 6,000 or 7,000 people across Microsoft. There's probably 600-800 of them are going to come out of Xbox. And you've seen people moving out of studios. The person who did Avowed is out, gone, moved on. They know that what's coming down the pipeline. So, and their redundancy program's still going. And they're going to lay another 7,000 off, and they've had this redundancy program going at Microsoft for the last 12 months. So, they're trying to accelerate to a position of stability. But yeah, it's the price rise. It's the same reason Sony did theirs. The cost of getting the thing put together for the amount that we're having to sell, and we don't want to be sitting in a major loss position because we're not recovering as much at the other end in software sales. So, and Nintendo's the same. Exactly the same circumstance. This stuff costs money to put into a box and ship it to you and sell it to you. And people want to get paid. People don't want to work for peanuts. And because they've all got major exposure in developed OECD countries, parts of Europe, the US, people won't go and work for them for, pennies and pounds anymore. They want to be properly paid, and fair enough, a proper wage for doing the work that they do. That costs money. And when you can't crunch people anymore, and you can't, they're not doing 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, back in, back out, sleeping in the office and all that sort of stuff, you got to put more people on. That costs money. The companies themselves have got legal responsibilities as well to put money back to shareholders and all the rest of it. And that's a totally different argument to be having.
That's funny you mentioned it. We would say that for years in the show. They have a legal fiduciary responsibility to make their shareholders money, and that's what people forget. I'm not saying I'm pro price increase. I don't want increased prices, but I understand how it works, why it works. I also understand my role as a consumer in the free market. But go ahead.
That's the other part of this that people seem to always conveniently forget when they want to have a tantrum and throw their cot toys out. You don't have to buy it at that price. There is secondhand markets. There are sale events. There are opportunities to buy things when they're discounted. You just shop around a bit and you'll find some savings somewhere. But everyone gets up in arms about, oh, it's $80 games. Oh, this is going up. Oh, that's going up. Oh, Xbox increased it. PlayStation's done this. Nintendo's done it. So, if you're not happy to pay that amount, just wait. It'll come down. If you want to be there day one, and controversially, I understand why old mate from Borderlands 4 said this. Gearbox head said this. If you really want it, you'll find a way of getting it. and the amount of times he's been misconstrued and misquoted and all the rest of it, I don't think is very fair because people are just tuning it for their agenda. Now, I don't necessarily like the idea of $80 games because it means that in Australia they go from $140 to $160 locally, which is nuts. But I just wait till they go on sale and get them for $20. And I got a backlog of hundreds of games that I have not paid a cent over $20 Australian for, which is like $8 US. I got The Last of Us Part 2 for $8 US because I waited and got it when it was on sale. And then I got the free upgrades and all the rest of it. $8. And I've got the PS5 version and I didn't have to pay a cent more. Same thing with Spider-Man 2018. $8 US. And there's plenty of other games I've gotten where I just don't, I wouldn't have paid more than $10 US even with the FX changes. So, if $80 is the new norm, well, great. As you just eloquently put it, we're consumers. We know where we will engage it. If people really want it day one, they will find a way of getting it. Will they pay $80? Maybe, maybe not. There's an air of convenience around that as well. If you don't want to go out and do the footwork and do the shopping and find some place that's got it a bit cheaper, well, then you're just paying for the convenience of having it on the store and you just go click, click, bang, I can start playing it when it's downloaded. But don't whinge, don't go around whinging and carrying on like you're, the savior of all if you're not prepared to engage in the conversation around, well, what does this actually mean for everyone that's involved in it? And what's my price point of engagement? Because there's plenty of games out there that aren't $80 and will never be $80. And the hyper focus on the AAA end of the major platform development studios, if that's all that people care about, they are missing out on some absolute gems of games because their indie games are phenomenal. The AA stuff that's coming through from some of these publishers is phenomenal. The stuff that's coming out of Japan now, phenomenal. You should see some of the stuff coming out of Europe that's starting to land. Like, look at Claire Obscurian. Like, that's everyone's saying, that's what it needs to, is what it needs to be. Again, 5 years ago on this show, you and I were talking about the tools are coming through to allow these small teams to do this stuff. Sifu was a great example. Stray was a great example. Kenna Bridges Spirits, great example. Like,
but
it's
Falky,
happening.
just to interrupt you, people say this, but they don't speak with their wallet. I mean, there's a
Exactly.
reason. There's a reason why developers, publishers are making AAA games still, because there's market demand. There's a demand for it, a strong demand by the market for those types of games. Because we see. I mean, I don't know what the sales numbers are on Claire Obscure Expedition 33. I think it's doing well. I believe it's doing well. I don't have I have numbers. I think Matt Piscatella posted some engagement numbers today on Blue Sky because the fanboys chased him off of Twitter because they're a bunch of man babies crying over data.
Yeah.
But he said Expedition 33 had a great U.S. launch and ranked 19th in April, the month of April, for monthly active users on Xbox and 21st on Steam. It also placed among the top 35 sellers of April overall and top 25 on PlayStation. Yep. It launched April 24th. So within 1 week, basically, or 6 days, right, for the month of April, it's had that success. Now, I think, and I hope this is a game. And by the way, I don't know if you play the game, Falky. I'm on my second playthrough, and it's probably going to be, for those who've listened to the show for a long time, I have I've had 3 playthroughs of Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 was my favorite game this gen, but Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is up there. Like I'm actually getting to the point where I'm like this could be my game of the generation. It's that good. It's a $50 game. And so when a game comes out like this, like people should support those things, but some do, but I guess go back to my point is that there's just a high demand for these AAA experiences, which is why those developers keep making them. And I think that ties into the price point. You know, and we'll get to the pricing here in a little bit. What Randy Pitchford said. I do want to welcome B Money to the show. B, what is going on, man?
What's happening, fellas?
Oh,
Hey.
B, it's great to hear from you, man. How have you been?
You know, living life, man. How you guys doing?
I know you're busy with sports and everything. Playoffs right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. B, let me ask you: have you played Clair Obscur Expedition 33?
I have not. I do have it, but I have not played it yet.
Man, I just started my second playthrough.
Yeah, I'm hearing great things. A lot of people have been talking about it since its release, and I'm actually hoping to jump into it this weekend. But yeah, just haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Yeah, no, it's I don't get too much detail, B, but it is. If I remember correctly, you do like turn-based games, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna love the turn-based combat in this game. It's done really well. This game, the inventory management system, the story, the characters, the parrying system, dodge, the leveling up. It is. No game is perfect, but this is to me the closest thing to perfection. It's done that good, and I played Metaphor Refantasy, which by the way is coming to Game Pass. It's a huge get for Game Pass. I played that last year, and that's a great game.
Yeah, that game's really good. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Metaphor is great. The turn-based, but this, and you'll when you play you'll see that you'll see some of the influence of those games in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So, but B, I did see your video about Battlefield.
Yes, sir. I can't wait, man.
Yeah, so I haven't played a Battlefield in a long time. So that's going to be now. That's Vince Appella's working on that, right?
Yeah. Well, he's leading all the teams that are working on it, because there's like 5 teams, I think, or 6 teams that are actually developing the game right now. But yeah, he's the lead that's kind of steering the ship this time around. So everything that's been leaking over the past couple months with Battlefield Labs, everything's looking good. It's looking like we're returning to form. We're getting back to the battlefield 2, 3, 4 days. And a lot of people are really, really excited. You know, we just hope that, you know, once it does officially launch, that it launches in a good state. You know, servers are intact and we're able to get on and have a good time. But everything that's leaked is looking amazing. The destruction is back. I think you know, once, you know, some of the guys left and they, you know, developed the finals and they're working on that Arc Raiders game. You know, once that core kind of left and, you know, kind of showed DICE, you know, that they could do it on their own, DICE has realized that they need to return back to that. So I'm super excited, you know, for Battlefield. And hopefully, you know, it comes out later this year. If not, you know, top of next year, I'm cool with that. I just want the best product at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I do want to welcome to the show. We have a special guest, Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, has joined us. Jensen, how are you this evening? Maybe he's not there. Okay, we lost Jensen. Maybe he'll come back. But no, B, great to have you. Great to have you, man. It's been a long time, and you know, miss talking games with you. But I forgot what we were talking about, Fauci. We're talking about the $80 games, and we'll get to that in just a sec, because that's, you know, the whole Randy Pitchford thing. But
I'll have to just take this opportunity to excuse myself, and I'll be back shortly.
Okay. Hold on a sec here. What? I just pulled it. I was going to share my screen, and now I lost it. Oh, geez. Hold on. But anyhow, but Clear Obscure Expedition 33B, it's such a great game. And like I said, I started my second playthrough. Now it's interesting now that I wouldn't say I've mastered the combat and the art of parrying in that game, but the second playthrough is definitely much easier than the first time playing through. So, I got the timing down with the dodges, the parrying, stuff like that. So, much easier than the first time. Oh my God, someone's posting something about Oli's fans in the chat. Oh boy. All right. I'm not going to read that, but anyhow. B, so we have, and we talked about this last year. Remember the business meeting, Microsoft, Xbox leadership. We have news now that another Xbox exclusive is going to PlayStation, and that is Hellblade 2. I don't think anyone on the panel is surprised by this. What are your thoughts, B?
I mean, it was inevitable, that this was going to happen. We kind of know what the strategy is at this point. That pretty much everything that they release is going to be hitting multiple platforms. And this game coming to PlayStation should be no surprise to anybody. I think going forward, Microsoft would like to release their games day and date on all platforms. I think even if you look at just Indiana Jones and some of the other games that they released with this staggered release, it's probably not as beneficial as they thought it would be. And that, releasing the games day and date is probably more beneficial for them overall. So I think that's going to be the strategy going forward. I think that's why, games like Fable were pushed back, and Gears as well. So I think when those, releases come around, that they will be released on all platforms at the same time.
Okay. Have they haven't had any day one release, like day and date? I mean, outside of, Call of Duty, which makes sense, right?
Well, I mean, they just released Doom, which was a day-to-day release, but
that's right.
Also,
yeah,
it was, from, the Bethesda Studios branch. So it wasn't from a studio, like one of their homegrown studios, like 343 or the Coalition. So, but I think going forward, those studios will also release games day and date on the opposing platforms.
Yeah, I am. It's interesting. We talked about it on this show, maybe a week ago, or I talked about when they talked about 4 games, and because I think Slow-Mo had brought something up like that. They probably, I think Logic was part of that show with Slow-Mo and Gaming Forte. Oh no, Logic, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, okay. So I think it was a show that you were on with Slow-Mo and Forte, and I think Slow-Mo had mentioned that it wasn't really just 4 games or something. That this was kind of planned because just based on the timing of the announcements of the games going to other platforms, and that that porting over just isn't like a turning on the light switch, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, so he's talked about that. I've talked about that. You go back to the business update of late February of 2024. And when certain things have been said, I mean, obviously, given the amount of time it takes to develop a game and the notional knowledge we have of those timelines, that, I mean, you could see that at the times things were said, certain things had to have already been in motion and had to have already started. So, that just doubles down on a lot of those statements being disingenuous or deliberately misleading.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not surprised by Hellblade 2. I think it's just only a matter of time before we see Halo, Starfield. There's some rumors out there Starfield is going to be the next game that's announced as going to PlayStation. But again, not surprised by any of this. Yeah, it's interesting, but you mentioned day and date. That they may go that route with some of the other releases. Did you hear something specifically? You mentioned Fable. Did you hear something? Maybe that's why it was delayed.
No, I didn't hear anything, but I think it's just
Okay.
it's got to be common logic. You know what I mean? Like if you look at just what they're trying to do, um, it only makes sense for them to release the game day and date. Because even with like what they did with Indiana Jones, it's not like a super popular IP, and it did decent, but I think they probably would have preferred to have the pop, where they release it across all platforms at the same time, and they kind of have that synergy across all platforms. Whereas like when you have a game like just say with Hellblade, like it didn't have the greatest reception when it released. So now you release it on PlayStation, people are just like, all right, whatever. It's you know what I mean? It's not like this super big game. Most people, who saw the reception of the game, saw it wasn't like a game that everybody talked about very highly. So now it's coming to the platform. You'll get a certain amount of people who will check it out, but most people are just going to be like, another release that I don't care about. You know what I mean? So I think for them, they want to get it to where, if they have, good momentum around the game, that it releases all at one time.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. If what you say comes true, ends up being true. They start releasing games day and date. They do it on PC. Be interesting to see if they do it on PlayStation at some point. With some of those bigger titles. I thought they were going to do some kind of like staggered release for some of their bigger titles and maybe smaller titles, or obviously for the multiplayer stuff that they would do day and date.
But why would they do that?
No, I'm just saying. Like, I thought that was kind of the initial their game plan.
Yeah, I think that probably was their initial game plan, but I think what they are starting to realize is that they aren't really capturing as many people as they could if they release the games at the same time. Because I think what happens is, and this could be kind of said for a lot of things when it comes to entertainment, is like if it's not available everywhere when it releases, then you kind of miss people. You know what I mean? Because then people are on to the next thing. So it's like, all right, well, yeah, it's great that all these games are coming to PlayStation, and PlayStation, these Xbox games are in the top 3 or top 4 of the monthly sales of PlayStation. But a lot of these games, they sold 1 million copies. And it's like they could have sold 3 million copies or 5 million copies. You know what I mean? Depending on when they were released. Like it's cool to have, this small pop, and it'll last for a month or two or whatever. But if you want to grab the most amount of people, you want to have those games released across all platforms at the same time. It's the same thing that you see with the PlayStation when they release the games on PC. It's like, it's great that those games finally came to PC, but none of them are doing numbers.
So let me ask you a question, B. Speaking of numbers and PC, there's been a lot of I think was it last week around Bungie, and more specifically Marathon.
Yeah.
And that the artwork may have been stolen by Bungie, and I forget the name of the artist. I'd have to look this up again. I thought I had it up, and now I can't find the article. But anyhow, that Bungie was caught using artwork or assets from another artist without their permission. And so this is kind of like this is kind of, I feel like with the Bungie acquisition, when Sony acquired them and everything, and there was, a discussion about the culture there, toxicity at Bungie. I forget, there's a content creator who I follow. She's talked about her time at Bungie. Didn't really have some good things, positive things to say about Bungie. Is there a lawsuit between Bungie and one of the like former leads here at Bungie? I feel like there's something. I'd have to go back and look that up. But anyhow, but Bungie, to me at least, has been kind of I feel like they've been like under the microscope since, probably more so, I think, since the acquisition by Sony. But here we are with Marathon, and Logic, we talked about Marathon, the extraction shooter, and after this latest I guess controversy, if you will, about Bungie using artwork or assets from another artist for Marathon without their permission. There's people out there saying, this is kind of like the death blow to Marathon. That this game is like it's just bad used bears, right? I don't necessarily know if I think the optics of it don't look good, but I don't know if this is the death blow to this game. I think some of the challenges, I think this game's going to, because an extraction shooter is probably going to face some challenges because it, with engagement and it, that kind of shooter catering to a smaller consumer base. But Logic, you and I talked about this. What do you think? And I know you've tweeted this out too, but what do you think? Not so much I don't think the stolen art thing is going to be like the death blow to this game, but I do think it's going to be some of the other things that extraction shooters or that make these types of games challenging. What are some of those things for you, Lodge, that you think are going to be challenging for this game to be successful? And again, I don't even know. I think people, when they speak of Marathon, they might be thinking of, oh, well, it's Bungie, and this game's, if this game's not huge, if it doesn't do Destiny numbers, then it's a failure. And I'm not so sure this game was meant to do Destiny numbers, to say it's had the same kind of impact as Destiny.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of over under, right, in the conversations that are happening. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think strategically this game was ever positioned to have to do Bungie numbers. I think it was supposed to be a tier 2 kind of property within the Bungie live service portfolio, right, where it would do enough and it would then still allow, the core Destiny 2 team to either do whatever they're going to do, right? Whether or not that's a Destiny 3 or a continuation of Destiny 2, and a relaunch into a new saga, kind of, if you look at it kind of as a like MCU epics, right? You had Infinity War first, and now you've got the multiverses thing. But by the same token, I think this game faced an uphill battle, and it was never, in my opinion, it was never going to do enough of what they needed as the tier 2 property within the Bungie portfolio. Because in my mind, this extraction shooter play, the way they're going at it is it's kind of like the Souls game of first person shooters, or the Souls game of live service games, right? It's a bit like EVE Online in some ways, right? In terms of just kind of, because it is entirely PvP and there's no way to avoid it being PvP. And because it's so what happens in games like that, like, again, you look at EVE Online, what it drives is it drives permanence, but also kind of burden to a certain extent. Like EVE is not something that you play casually, right? It's not something that you allocate like a slice of your time, and so that you like dip into it and dip back out of it kind of at random, right? After you achieve a certain level in EVE, and granted, you can grind a long time, very long time in EVE Online before you hit this point, but then you hit a certain point where, like, in order to survive in the game, you have to join a corporation. Like, there is no loaning it, right? Because everybody else has joined a corporation, and so everybody else has gathered in mass numbers. So in an extraction shooter like this, in that type of career mode, you're going to have to onboard to like a regularly playing crew, right? And that has burden and weight to it. just in terms of, the big chunk of your audience that is adults, and the fact that they may not necessarily have lives that accommodate that type of social fabric. So, but on top of that, it has, again, like EVE Online, it has stakes. Like nothing is for play, right? Like everything is a gamble. It's almost like online poker, right? It's like you go into a match, you're going to take gear, and that gear is always going to be at risk, and there's permanence to losing it. So I think that model of gameplay kind of appeals to the hardcore, and that's fine. That has a chance to do well, but it never breaks out. Like it's incredibly rare for you to break out to something like Elden Ring type of numbers, right? And you see the things Elden Ring had to do to kind of scoop the ladle down and wide enough out to an audience away from the core Souls formula to encourage that level of onboarding. The overemphasis on how well this was going to do, I think, goes back to Bungie, maybe PlayStation corporate strategy, and the belief that, we if we just do an Escape from Tarkov, it'll play bigger because the Bungie name will be behind it. And I think that's a lofty overestimation of how this thing is going to play on the market. So, I think it'll do, not badly. I just question whether or not it's going to hit whatever the minimum threshold KPIs are, right, for corporate for them to allow it to remain, a going concern for some number of years.
So I guess, you mentioned the Bungie name. So I'm wondering if they're banking on that. Okay. Like, we're going to get some traction in this game. We're going to get some people engaged because we're Bungie, and we're known for Destiny. We're known for Halo. People are going to naturally flock to this game, and maybe they will in the beginning. But I think the challenge is, how do you keep those people hooked? Because, and I think you said this earlier, Logic, but like this game, like you basically, I guess the hook, if you will, is not trying to lose your gear. I think it's high risk, high reward, but you can lose all your gear if you fail to if you don't extract or win a particular match that you're in. But I think part of it is, and I think part of people looking at this game and really putting eyes on it is because it's Bungie too. Somebody put Bungie equals thieves in the live chat. Yeah, I don't disagree with the thing with the art. The assets like that. That's not a good look. And we've heard about leadership issues at Bungie. I wonder if this is just another example of issues there with leadership. And I believe if I'm not mistaken, I believe they did, but I apologize. I've been following as much gaming news as I typically do because I've been working, and when I've been having free time and playing what might be, Logic, the game of the generation, Claire Obscura Expedition 33, which, Logic, we can actually talk about, not on this show. We can actually talk about it now because I finally beat it. But I think did they address, I gotta look this up now. I thought Bungie did address the art thing. I don't remember now.
Yeah, they've made various statements about it. I try not to repeat those because I think the story gets very convoluted. But I think the baseline is that the
former employee. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logic. Yeah.
That the assets were co-opted by an employee who's no longer with Bungie, and that because the person was no longer with Bungie, there was just never any causality for like a major thorough deep dive investigation into the assets. And we have people who were skeptical of that. At the end of the day,
like if you guys have ever created anything that has anything to do with art and assets, it's very hard to go back and find out if those assets were created by your art team. You know what I mean? Like, just like if you look at the BRAP logo, it's just neon lights.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take that aesthetic and put neon lights in your game, that doesn't mean that it's technically stolen from the BRAP logo, but it's like those assets were directly linked to an artist or whatever. So I mean, they were to find the artist coming up and say, hey, like, you took these assets, this is stuff that I created, da da da. But like a lot of times, a lot of assets are not created by the artists who work on these games. They come from asset stores. They come from different places on the internet, and those assets are brought into the game. They might be repurposed, slight different changes, and they're using the game as well. So it's when it comes to assets, it's very hard to especially if you're like an art director or somebody overseeing the game. You see something that's cool in the game, and it's like, oh, okay, this is the art direction of the game. This is where kind of where we're going with it. And a lot of the assets look the same, so they're repurposed throughout the world, and you just kind of move on with your day. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a tough thing to just kind of go back and double check, make sure every asset in the game isn't stolen. Of course, Bungie is in the wrong in this case, because there were so many assets that the artist could reference, that are in the game. But this is not something that hasn't happened in a million games that we played in our lifetime.
Yeah, it looks like Bungie did acknowledge that some of the art featured in the game was stolen from the artists who didn't work on the game, promising a thorough review of Marathon's in-game assets as a result. Yeah, they say confirmed a former Bungie artist included, is it Antareal's designs and a texture sheet that was ultimately used in game. So they have addressed it. But my understanding too is that this isn't the first time this has come up with Bungie. There was something with Destiny 2, some promotional material that was with that for Destiny 2 that was said to be stolen as well. The art assets behind that. So welcome Falky back here. Falky, we're talking about Bungie right now and the stolen art. But it just, I gotta say, sometimes there's that saying where there's smoke, there's fire. As we're talking about this, I'm thinking about the issues with leadership. I can't think of that influencer now who, I forget her name, worked at Bungie, talked about some of the dysfunction there. I want to say there's some kind of lawsuit with Bungie, former Bungie leader. Yeah.
So there's two of the former leaders at Bungie have got lawsuits pending against them for inappropriate behavior and a heap of other crap that they shouldn't have done. But I mean, it's an odd thing. You would struggle to find a more creatively bankrupted leadership team anywhere in gaming than you would with what the leadership team that Sony bought when they bought Bungie. And for all the crap that Sony copped for doing it, they have kicked an awful lot of those scummy buggers out of there, and just flatly thrown them out and not paid them to go. There are some smart ones that saw the writing on the wall and took the money and buggered off, but yeah, the deconstruction of Bungie is ongoing, and there will be heads roll over this. And this is probably the thing that lands Sony and PlayStation, or Sony, the opportunity to say, well, Bungie's not standing out on its own. It's now coming under the governance structure of PlayStation, and that's it. She's fully acquired and all completely under the banner, which would be the most sensible thing to do, rather than trying to stand up a new leadership team out there for Bungie. I did see a comment online, and I don't know if you discussed this before, but I saw a comment online, can't remember who said it, suggesting that they should take the efforts to just redirect Bungie to get to work on Destiny 3. Just invest some money on that and put an exit plan in for Destiny 2 and get started working on Destiny 3. But they've got an awful lot of goodwill that they've completely torched with what's happened, and then they have to go back and check every single asset for its artwork and whether it's been stolen or not. Like, yeah, if anyone thought Marathon was coming out on time before this blew up, I'd be surprised if the thing lands now.
It was, but was it supposed? Was it delayed? I think it was delayed, right? Again, I'm a little bit out of the loop. Marathon was delayed, right? Was it supposed to come out this year?
Yeah, it's still scheduled to come out this year. Fair Games is the one that got kicked to next year.
Oh, that's Jade Redmond.
Ex Jade Redmond.
Oh, yeah, ex Jade, who Logic contends that hasn't done anything since Assassin's Creed, which I don't disagree with you, Logic.
No, I don't contend that. That's historical fact of record.
That's
yeah,
fact,
that's true. Yes, yeah. That's actually a fact. That's true. And manages to still.
Some people are really good at being creative, but they're really horrible at leading. And others are really great at leading and couldn't create burnt toast if you gave them a fire and a loaf of bread. So, you know.
Oh my goodness. Well, speaking of creators, give me a second here. Trying to share. I've been having issues trying to screen share. I don't know if StreamYard's acting up, but if I can do this now real quick. I think I got it to work now. All right, here we go. Good old Randy Pitchford. In the news, maybe for the wrong reasons. So Randy got some heat after saying on Twitter that real fans would find a way to buy an $80 game like Baldur's Gate 4, right? And I think he actually even said that if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. He recalled a time spending $80 on a Sega Genesis game. He was working part-time. I don't know if it was part-time. He's working minimum wage, I think he said. And
is that what he actually said though, or is this paraphrasing an interview?
I'd have to pull up the tweet. He said, if you're a real fan, you make it happen. Before recalling a time he spent $8 on a Sega Genesis game 3 decades ago, purchase that was probably more affordable to the son of a U.S. intelligence systems tech senior 91. That's an average. Okay. Inflation exists. We give inflation bonds, for example, to employees, and price increases make sense. This is actually the response from. I'm sorry, I'm reading this article from Games Radar. The Baldur's Gate 3 developer actually called Randy out for this.
Yeah,
I gotta try to find this tweet again.
That's right. I'll just jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
For a contextual point in what you just mentioned there. And they talk about the cost of creating and the cost of making and all this other stuff. Just as a baseline. So we were talking about Claire Obscurian earlier. So that was a team of 30, right? Made that game over a period of, was it 5 years? 4 years? 5 years? Let's go with 5 years for round numbers, right? The labor cost alone for those 30 individuals, this is the labor cost alone. This is not any overheads, any facilities work, any data stations, any technology, nothing. For 5 years, those 30 individuals building that game would have cost $28 million. How many units? And then you add all that other stuff on top of it. You're probably looking at a cost, not a budget, but a cost of somewhere around the $38 million mark, right? So if you're selling, and that's without these massive overheads. Now remember who owns them now, and think about the overhead for Take-Two, and think about how many years of loss, not months, years of massive losses that company is now wearing as a corporate entity. And straight away you can see why that something the size of Borderlands 4, with the amount of years and the amount of people and the amount of technology and the amount of all the other crap that's been poured into it, you can see why it's on the precipice, and it's got to land. But if you've got a limited point of selling this game, it's not going to do 10 million units in the first month. It might do a couple of million units for the fans of the game, because they've had a few stumbles since Borderlands 3. Again, comes down to pricing economics. If you know you've got a limited but dedicated fan base, you start to charge a premium price because that's the only way you're going to do it. You can't do a cheap price and go on volume because you're just not going to get there. And I don't necessarily think that what he said is incorrect. I think it's the way he said it. He could have been a little less direct with it, but as I was saying before the show, if you want to pay $80 for a game because you want it day one, or you're paying for the convenience of it, that's your choice. If you don't want to pay $80, wait 3 months; it'll go on sale.
And I totally agree. That's the same thing I said, Falky. That's the same exact thing I said. There's nothing wrong with what Randy said. Maybe he said it incorrectly. You know, maybe he wasn't very PC with what he said. But at the end of the day, he's correct. If you want the game, you will pay whatever the ticket is. We have seen this multiple times. We see people who go and get the collector's edition. That's $250. People spend that money because they want to. And if you want whatever it is that you desire, you will spend whatever it costs to get it. That's just the bottom line. If GTA 6 comes out and says that the game is $120, people will pay $120. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
People are going to lose their mind if that game's $100, B. But I don't disagree with you.
No, they won't.
Some people will.
No, they
Some
won't.
people will.
No, they won't.
Those that won't buy it, those that won't ever buy it on day one will be the ones that scream the loudest because they don't have the stones to put their hand in their pocket and pull out their wallet and support what they champion or complain about. And I completely agree with B. If it'd be $120, and there's probably a very logical and sensible business case that it's probably floating around in the background now saying we should make it $120. We'll be able to recoup a heap more money by doing that with less sales than by dropping it to $70 or $60 and hoping for a crap load of sales. Right? They'll do it. There'll be millions of people who will front up day one and not bat an eyelid at $120.
Yeah. And what if they come out and say, fine, GTA, the base game is $80. But if you want the online, it is now a subscription. It's going to cost you $9.99 a month. Guess what? People don't care. Because people already spend loads of money on the shark cards.
I mean,
so
to your point, B, GTA was charting NPD because of the shark cards.
Right.
People are literally just buying the game again for that.
Exactly. So if you want something, you will spend the money on it. Maybe, like I said, Randy could have worded it differently. You know, he could have come off, you know, a little bit more nice about it. But at the end of the day, what he said is completely true. We see this every year with the sports games. We just saw this with Forza coming to PlayStation. What was the highest pre-order on PS5 for the Forza edition? It was the highest price one. To get the game early that been out for 4 years.
Yeah.
How does that make sense? Please, anybody explain that to me. The game has been out. You getting the game 3 days early or 4 days early, whatever it was, and people paying $120 for
it.
Yeah.
People want it, they'll pay for it. And look,
Well,
there's nice ways of saying that. But again, how many times have people who have been in leadership positions in businesses stuck their foot in their mouth? Go all the way back to the PS3 launch. If people want it, they'll get a second job. And constantly, time and time and time again, people have stumbled over that one in trying to explain it properly. And it's like, we appreciate the sensible thing to say. Well, you know, as he said, the publisher's the one that sets the pricing for the RRP. It's out of my hands. Fair enough. He gets pressed on it, and then he comes out with that. Well, a sensible response could have been, look, I really can't comment because I have no power over it. However, if it does come out at $80, at least you've got some warning that it's a potential it might happen. And for those who are real fans of this series, I'll apologize now if it is. However, it's out of my hands. But please, if you really want it day one, I encourage you to shop around, find a way, or start saving now for it. You know, it might only be $10, and that's a big thing for some people, but it's only $10. You've got time to do it. If it was, announced that it was going to be $80 2 days before it launched, that would upset a lot of people. But hey, it's in the news and it's out there. But yeah, the wording of it, just, people will find a way. Yeah, they will find a way, but you don't say it in a forceful manner.
Well, I mean, that's to say that, Randy probably needs to take a PR class, but I do want to read the exchange here. This is actually someone responding to Randy. Randy, this game better not be $80. Don't take that risk. A lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80. That comment I don't agree with. And feed this notion of constant increase of, hold on, let me read this again. Don't take that risk. A lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80 and feed this notion of constant increase of the price tag. You are the CEO. You have some say with the price when it comes to the publisher. Logic, I would go to you because you had that.
Before Logic go, let me just address that real quick because I'm tired of people saying that most gamers won't do this. People do not understand that the industry is drought driven off of the people who spend the money, not off the average gamer who wants to get their games on sale. That is not what the industry is driven off of. Not one bit. The reason why Epic is making all that money is because people spend money. The reason that 2K Take-Two is one of the biggest publishers in the world is because people spend money. The reason that EA is one of the biggest publishers in the world is because people spend money. It's not because everybody gets their games on a discount or they wait for a sale. That is not how the industry is driven. To say that most people would not spend $80 on a game is asinine. Because if you look at the biggest games of the year, every year, those are the games where people spend the most fucking money. So stop it. It is not true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't agree with that. That comment that a lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80. I mean, people pay $70 for games. People have paid the increases that we've seen. And by the way, price increase in gaming, to your point in Logic, I think you mentioned this on Twitter, isn't anything new. You had that great Gandalf tweet, which I was like, I thought nailed it. But Logic, you talked a lot about this, like this idea of a price increase not being new. And that, while there's some gamers, I don't remember the entire tweet, but I remember you saying something to the effect that some gamers won't pay 80, but some will. Or that you certainly understand people don't want to pay 80, but I want to paraphrase what you're saying here, but what was your exact tweet again about that?
I mean, MB, I pretty much said the exact same thing today. I mean, there's, and this is my problem with the Randy Pitchford thing is, so, I mean, I know it's going to come out the same way, and I know people are going to be bothered by it, but I'm just going to say it. Like, I'm not, and it's, I'm putting the sentiment up front, even though it doesn't entirely frame my own response to this controversy. But just as a baseline, I'm not in the mode today of giving gamers a pass for talking to developers and industry people any type of way that they freaking feel they want to. I mean, I'd love to, but what gamers have proven is that their parents didn't raise them right. They don't have home training, and they don't know how to talk to people. So my point in this exchange is when you run up to Randy Pitchford and say, this game better not cost $80, people aren't going to keep playing this incremental price increase, when in fact you're just historically just wrong. You're entirely on the wrong side of history. And you know what type of person Randy Pitchford is. And then everybody clutches their pearls and lets out a big gasp as if they're surprised by the response. I'm like, look, I don't I don't victim blame you for getting mugged, but I am still going to call you a dumbass for being in the wrong fucking part of town at the wrong time of night. Like, you know, at some point, people have to start taking responsibility for their own actions on the internet. So, yeah, I mean, to what B said, you know, this whole thing of, and I mean, I quoted a snippet of the larger quote. You know, a lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80 and feed this notion of constant increase in the price tag. Wrong. Since the late 1970s through 2005, games have incrementally increased, and I'm talking about the core premium stock mainline game title sold per console generation. That price has increased by plus $10 every 8 to 10 years. This is an objective historical fact. It is indisputable. It is not in question. And every single time that has occurred, there has been no abatement in the demand for video games. There has not been some cataclysmic knock on sales. There has not been some market reaction that has forced all game companies to go back and rejigger their pricing. They have steadily, progressively cranked the price by plus $10 every 8 to 10 years for a 35 to 40 year time period of the console industry. The one period of time that they behaved abnormally was from 2005 to 2020, where they held the price steady. And during that time, what we got as a result of that was microtransactions, battle passes, free to play, all the really money grubby, grimy things that people complain about. But while the price was steadily increasing at plus $10, people paid it. And had they done that in the same manner, guess what that math adds up to? This year, we would be at $80 games. That is the normal historical progression of the industry, if people understood it and people went back and read it, right? So, I mean, $80 games are a potential reality. And when you go back to Randy's original interview back at PAX, he didn't say the game was going to be $80. He said, like, look, I'm not going to rule it out. Like he said, we've got a lot of wackadoodle stuff going on in the industry. We have constantly rising production costs. We have contention. We have this tariffs thing going on, which is just causing a random chaotic effect on the whole industry, like wall to wall. And what he said is, I can't sit on the stage and tell you that the game's not going to be $80. I'm not going to lie to you like that. Now, what some other influencers and content creators have said, and I agree with the sentiment, is like and this is a little bit of my pushback on the Randy could have said it better, is you guys constantly want stuff chocolate coated, easy to swallow. You therefore consistently believe the lies that some of these companies tell you. And then when a person gives it to you straight, right, with no sugar coating on it, then you get angry about it. And I'm like, he's telling you the reality the same way that we tell you the reality every week, and you refuse to believe it. And then those things become true, and then you get angry. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wrote. What I wrote today at the top of this article is you guys pick the title. Gamers, you fund the problem, then you get mad it exists? Or is the real scandal pretending Randy was ever the good guy? Or no, $10 more for games ain't new, and no, Pitchford didn't sneak up on you. Like, none of these things are unprecedented. They've all been laid out. Like, you know, a couple years ago, we used to say, look, you know, you could easily educate yourself with a Google. You could go to ChatGPT. You don't even have to Google 3 times now to do cross references, because ChatGPT will do it for you. Right? So
yeah.
Like, and then this notion that like Borderlands isn't worth it. Like, and I'll go back to the whole thing of like some content creators that I get along with that are in my circle of trust, mentioned concern that, Randy was kind of, torpedoing his development team. And I'm like, Randy Pitchford's been a known bad actor since 2007. Like 2007 was when he called other developers in the industry crybabies for crying about Unreal Engine. Right? And it's gotten steadily, progressively worse since then. 2007 was before the first Borderlands came out.
I've always made jokes about Randy that he parties too much, and that meaning that he doesn't go to bed. He says shit off the cuff too much. Like he just He's unfiltered, but go ahead.
And I'm not saying tariff on digital games. I'm saying that the economic impact of tariffs is causing a lot of unforeseen chaos, right, on various markets. That's what I'm pointing to. But this whole notion that like, oh, Randy's done a bad thing now, and he's gonna, risk the sales of this game. I'm like, Randy's been misbehaving since 2007. Since that time, which was before the Borderlands series started, right? The mainline Borderlands games, Borderlands 1, 2, and 3, have sold over 50 million units. The entire franchise, including spin-offs, has sold over 80 million units. And Pitchford has been the same bad actor he's been, and it's gotten worse. Right? 2019 was when he got accused of the porn on the USB stick, embezzling $12 million that were meant for game developer bonuses, right, and some other thing. We have the thing that came out about like how he mistreated, what was it, the composer or maybe one of the claptrap voice actor for Borderlands 2. Right? So all these scandals and controversies have broke, and they haven't caused people to break stride one iota, right, in consuming that game. So again, while you as an individual, maybe you're not going to pay for it, and maybe you're fed up and like you have a problem with it, you acting as if you're the market and just being oblivious and ignorant to the things going around you, that also doesn't play well. And in fact, my personal problem with that type of behavior is it makes all of us look dumb. Right? And I've mentioned on this show before, venture capitalists and the money people in the gaming industry do notice that, right? They do notice that, oh my God, free to play, blah, 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 all these arguments and stuff, and all these straw man arguments and like just ignorance of how the industry actually works. They watch that and they say, okay, they're not actually basing their complaint on any fact. This will blow over. And then they just wait. And then they do the exact thing that they were planning on doing anyway. Right? And what are we saying today? Now we're constantly talking every week about how free-to-play, microtransactions, battle passes, gas, like rules the industry and creates all these black hole games that are causing difficulties for other types of games to survive. Right? So, yeah. I mean, my whole problem with the basis of the arguments yesterday is that they were all just factual, just incorrect. Right, bad premises, bad foundational arguments.
Yeah, I do want to read Randy's response. He says, A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. Like I don't. It's interesting he mentioned like the 90s, and actually I don't. I can kind of relate to what Randy said there because I remember buying I had friends that bought the Sega Genesis and they were mowing lawns, like literally saving money by mowing lawns to buy a game, to buy the Sega Genesis. But I guess his overarching, at least his point is like, look, like people are going to figure out ways to buy things they want. And I think that's what I think got lost. I think people got upset that he said it, but in reality, he's not totally off base because that's what consumers do. I talked about that earlier, Falky, how consumers operate in the free market. Like they'll figure it out. Like you'll like you said, Falky, you wait for it to go on sale, or you may say, you know what, I'm not going to buy this game this month because Borderlands 4 is coming out, and I'm going to allocate that money that I would buy for this game and apply that to my purchase of Borderlands 4. I mean. And look, I know people get upset when we talk about price increases in games, and I've seen people say, "Oh, you guys are advocating for it," or saying it's or making excuses. We're not. We're just telling you why it happens. And
there's a clear delineation that needs to be struck here. Is there's a difference between explaining how or why something happens versus defending the fact that it's happening. 99.9% of the time on this show with the people that we all converse with each other on here and out of here, we take a point of explaining why or how it happens. We're not defending the fact that it's there. We've all got our own personal positions on whether we will or won't accept this as consumers, but that's our individual choices. So for anyone who's listening, please don't think that we're ever defending this stuff. I get hammered with this frequently, and I'm sure everyone else on here does as well. I've seen it happen on everyone else that's in this panel tonight. We make a comment about trying to help people understand what's causing this to happen. And then we're straight away getting belittled and targeted for saying that we're defending it. Well, we're explaining how something happens is not defending the fact that it happens. So that's one thing I just want to put on the record for my behalf and for anyone else who wants to jump in behind that. But the other thing to be mindful of as well is, as B said before, and it touches on what Logic was just saying, and we're discussing it earlier about being consumers, the general public that are buying and funding all this stuff aren't the 2% of gamers that exist in social media land that just like to whinge, bitch, moan, and complain because that's all they ever do. Because they make a comment or complaint, they get validated, everyone jumps in, they all feel warm and fuzzy inside. You think about who is actually funding a lot of this stuff. It's either mature age gamers who've got the means and capabilities of thinking for themselves and putting their money where they want to, and 99% of them being able to balance their own fiscal positions in their own home budgets to be able to understand, do my responsibilities to my family allow me to spend $80 on this game on day one, or do they not? And that drives a lot of their consumer decisions, or they're redirecting funding for other bits and pieces back to be able to cover this gap. That's one side of it. But the vast majority, particularly for Borderlands 4, the vast majority of people who are paying for this for when it's launching is not going to be you or me or whoever that can make their own decisions. This is going to be parents buying it for kids or young teenagers, or it's going to be young teenagers asking somebody else to help pay for this thing. Most of the games that get purchased, the big ones, so Madden, FIFA, Call of Duty, all the big ones, Fortnite, all the big ones that generate crap loads of revenue. It's not people like you and me that's generating that revenue. It's mums and dads paying for the kids. And that's the target they're looking at. If the mums and dads look at it and go, it's up $10 for whatever, he wants it day one, it'll make him really happy. He'll enjoy it. He's deserved it. He's earned it, whatever. I'm chipping in the extra $10 they've put in the work. That's fine. That's the reality of what a lot of these organizations are looking at, is like, it's not just where's it coming from, it's who's actually funding it. So a lot of the monthly active users aren't actually the people who are paying, or not the monthly active users, a lot of the consumers that are buying these games en masse aren't the ones that are actually paying for it. It's a lot of other people that are funding this hobby for them. And particularly when, Randy comes out and makes those ridiculous comments for the silo that he's in, it's completely lost on 90% of who's going to be paying for that game. They're not going to know who he is. They're not going to care who he is. All they want to know is certain person wants it. It releases on this date. This is where I can buy it from. That's how much it might cost. That's it. That's the game in a nutshell, so to speak.
And to double down on what you said, Falky, earlier about the panel, explaining to people the causality behind some of these things, and treating us like Bruno in what was that? What's the Disney movie? I can't remember, but
Encanto.
Yes, but treating us like because we predicted or we explained it, we're the ones who made it happen. I think what I'll double down on and say it's a little frustrating about that, and just to reiterate is, no, we haven't necessarily defended it. We've talked about like why it happens and shown evidence and objective proof about that the market has found it acceptable, but also more so we have explained what it is gamers need to do to prevent it or stop it or abate it. We have said numerous times over the last 3 years, if you didn't want games to go to $80, if you didn't want them to go to $70, then you should be buying AA games and buying indies.
What are those?
Right. You should have bought Prince of Persia, right? The Lost Crown, right? You should have definitely bought Expedition 33.
Well, that's an absolute must buy.
Yeah, that's what you need to do to show the influence. But we've also explained the reason that more of those games don't get marketed, the reason why the media doesn't cover them, is because the media doesn't get hits on their news pages when they post about that stuff, right? And there's a reason why big publishers don't focus on them, because people don't buy them. So if you want to buy them, if you want the market forces to shift and the equilibrium to shift, then you need to buy those games, right? You need to stop like making the NPD chart every month. Right? As much as we explain, right? Exclusives are important, right? Despite all the pundits and the yahoos who run around talking about they're not, right? They're important because we see them showing up on NPD charts every single month. If you want that to stop happening, then buy AA's and buy indies, which, oh, by the way, really means like a lot more of you would be on PC. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's where they tend to thrive. Not saying that they're not on console, right? What we're saying is that if you really want things to happen, then your buying habits need to change, which is why I've been pushing back a lot recently about content creators and influencers who say one thing on a podcast and try and incite everybody to get on their outrage ponies, and then go to the cash register and behave in the complete opposite manner than that in which they were speaking.
You mean like buy PlayStation 5 Pros after asking who it's for? And
if you're asking who it's for, it's not for you. That's the main giveaway. If someone's asking who is this for, it's clearly it's not for them. Why have an opinion? Why share an opinion? If it's not for you, keep your mouth shut.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Falky. There's a whole conversation around the PlayStation Portal. Who is this for? And then we see now. This is kind of why we talk about this on this show. Like we always say, like, you know, how Twitter the market always reacts the opposite of how Twitter reacts, right? Meaning that Twitter always gets the market wrong.
Yeah, there is an index for that, by the way. They actually have an index for the inverse relationship between Twitter blowing up about something and how it will perform in the marketplace.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yep.
So is Twitter wrong all the time?
Yeah, there's a calculated inverse relationship and a metric that you can plug a formula into, that if you get certain amount of negative social media, or there's one for Twitter, one for Instagram, most of the major platforms. If you can generate to a certain point negative feedback from social media, there's an inverse but correlating outcome at the other end, which will tell you this is what you should expect in terms of positivity in your product.
Interesting. I wasn't even aware of that, Falky.
Yeah. So
look at that.
And like, look, Randy, Pitchford stuff might end up becoming in that zone. It's at certain levels, obviously, but there's ceilings and floors on it. But if you get in that zone, there's a relationship that pops out the other end. So,
well, that's the thing. Like we talk about, like what the reaction by influencers, even media types, and just people on social media, in particular Twitter, when they question things like the PlayStation Portal, the PS5 Pro, you know, $70 games, $80 games, and they make these
DualSense Edge. Yeah, they make, you know, remember the whole battery thing with the DualSense Edge. I mean, and I don't know if it's just fake outrage, or if it's for engagement, or people just generally just want to be upset for the sake of being upset. But if you feel this way about those things, I think to your point, Falky, if you're asking who's this for, yeah, it's probably not for you.
Yeah.
But don't assume that nobody wants it because you don't want it. And that goes back to that $80 price comment of, well, you know, nobody's going to spend $80, and that's not true. Like B Money said earlier, people are spending money on with the Forza, the Forza edition. What was it? The early edition,
access edition.
The early access. I mean, we saw the early access version for Starfield when Starfield released, actually did really well, and that was $100.
Yeah, but there's only one publisher who's doing that at the moment too. Might I point out?
Yes.
You got to buy the premium version to get the early access, and there's bugger all else that comes with it. It just lets you play the game 2 or 3 days earlier, and I really hope that doesn't become a thing. But they've done that a few times with a few different games, and there's only one publisher who's doing it.
But it worked for that. But
Take-Two or 2K does it too.
Yeah, they do it with NBA 2K, right?
Yeah. They're the ones that kind of started it.
Are they still doing it? I thought they'd actually added something worthwhile rather than the early access.
No. They still have. Well, you can pay for the $150 edition that comes with the NBA League Pass, but they still have the early edition for $100.
And people front up every year and cough up that much every year.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, that's just the base. You gotta still factor in all the VC that's sold after that.
I mean, I know people who only play 2K, and that's their $100 investment for the year.
Yeah.
And they're willing, because for them it's like, well, shit, I don't play anything else, so yeah, I'm gonna pay $100 because I'm gonna get tons of entertainment value out of $100.
Yep.
And I get, and I'm gonna fork over to get early access because I want to, get. I don't know, I forget why somebody explained to me why they get early access or something. It makes sense to me, but I have friends who are like hardcore. That's all they play, or FIFA.
Yeah,
they only play that.
The same thing. Yep.
Yeah.
While we're on that point, something I did see the other day, which I think is the stupidest decision that they've made over at EA, is launching Madden and NCAA on the same day. That is crazy. Absolutely stupidity. Whoever came up with that idea. And I hope they don't do it. But I did see that that's what they're talking about doing. Launching them on the same day.
Well, they bundled both games together. If you remember that this past year, and that bundle, at least here in the States, Madden and NCAA football actually charted NPD.
It was the highest selling SKU. It was high, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I think maybe Madden was higher, but I want to say that bundle was actually higher than College Game Day. It may have been the highest selling SKU out of the three.
It was, but then when they did the analysis, the tail off after the launch, it absolutely cannibalized Madden's sales at the back end of their window, and that's why they had that quarterly performance, which was so low.
Oh, interesting.
Because people would prefer to play NCAA than play the Madden game. So
it's a much better game. So.
Got their bit. So, but yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, I really hope you, from a business perspective, someone needs to be slapped for that. They're clearly not learning lessons. But again, you get it at a bundle at a discounted rate. Hey, great, that's better than buying both games separately, or wait 3 months and then they go on sale at a 25% discount. But the EA makes all their money in those games off, as you said before, the virtual currency. Same with 2K for the basketball, the NBA. They make all their money off the virtual currency because they basically all but force you to need to do that if you enjoy playing it and you're really into that stuff. Same with FIFA and all the rest of them.
Yeah, my understanding is you if you're in NBA 2K, VC is a must.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna play online and create a character, yes, VC is a must, and people will spend hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars creating characters on NBA 2K. So, I mean, it's why it comes out every year. It's why they don't miss any releases. It's why it's on every platform that possibly can be on.
They don't fiddle with the mechanics of the game all that much either, do they? Continuity is king in that respect.
That's right.
So it's so is that kind of go back to your point, Logic, when you say we kind of do this to ourselves? Was that you said that, or Falky, or B? Someone said that, or something to that effect.
I think we've kind of all said it, that like the claims people make on Twitter is just absolutely not the way the market reacts, right? Yep. We don't want $80 games, we don't want $70 games, but yeah, what the market does is it exactly buys $60, $70, and $80 games, exactly, right, that lead to those price increases, despite the fact that there's supply and inventory of the less expensive alternatives, right, and smaller games at a smaller scale. It's kind of, I mean, I'm going to call out, I guess what I'll call frauds who are like, oh, Clear Obscura Expedition 33, proves that, this is what the industry should do, and this is what the industry should do to survive, and you don't need these $300 million budget games. And I'm like, okay, you're saying that, but I can also tell by the way you're saying it, you're playing a game like this for the first time. Like, games like this have existed for decades, right? But you haven't talked about them, and you haven't made that claim, because otherwise there would be no need for you to make that claim. You would be making that claim like every week. Well,
it goes to show the lack of knowledge they have in the history of gaming, yet they're the first
ones to run
their mouth about it. blah, blah, blah. This is no good. That's no good. Most of them, I've actually spoken to influencers, I call them influencers, personalities in the gaming area, and I've said to them, I've made the comment, I was such and so, remember the loot box issue we had years ago? And they went, what? What do you mean loot boxes? And I had to explain to them the whole blow up about what happened when loot boxes first jumped in and why there's actual legislation in multiple countries and jurisdictions that prohibit loot boxes in gaming. And they had no clue about it. They had no clue about it. And they were like, because they were complaining about something to do with some randomization of, it was recently someone said, you go and open a box and you randomly get something. Can't remember which game it was. It was recent. And it ran up against that issue, and they were like, you don't pay, because you don't pay money for this random outcome. It gets around the loot box law issue, and they got slapped and was told, no, you can't do that because the laws and whatnot. And this particular individual, I won't name him, but this particular individual was going, this is just silly, I should be able to do it. And I was like, no, there's laws against that because of this had happened in the past. And they just looked at me blankly and went, what do you mean laws have been set to stop this from happening? When did that happen? I was like, how long have you been around gaming and actually decided to do any research on some of this stuff? Because a lot of them they don't understand the history of half the crap that's going on and how it has had an influence.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that historical perspective, because that's something that Logic talked about on his one particular Twitter post. You talked about like and I think I even said this too, like this idea of price increases isn't some new phenomenon. It's been happening for decades now, for decades at this point. And like, I think it was you just said it, Logic, like the market has supported 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70. It probably will support 70, 80. And look, I'm not advocating for $100, but at some point we probably will hit $100 threshold for video games. I mean, that's just been the natural progression that I've seen over the last couple decades of playing video games, that they have gone up in price and they will continue to go up. But again, as a consumer, you can either choose to participate or you can say, you know what? No, I'm out. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pay that.
Yeah, and I hate to be ageist, but I think a lot of that is also coming from people who were born in the late 90s, started gaming in 2005 when games were $60, and then experienced 20 years where that price remained consistent. And now they're content creators and they're yapping and running their mouth as if games were supposed to stay the same price forever. And I'm like, no, that's not the industry in the market. That's just your ignorance and lack of knowledge and awareness. And like, you could have picked up a book and looked to find out that wasn't the norm, but you didn't, right? You insisted that what you experienced for 20 years of your youthful life, and I get how it shaped your reality, but things on this planet have happened outside the years in which you were born or in which you became a content creator. Go look it up, go read it,
Oh my God. It's amazing with the day and age of internet, the access to all this information, that I feel like people have just, I don't know.
They just put no effort in. They put
Just,
no
yeah,
effort
they're just
in.
doing effort.
No
Yeah.
desire to learn. They got infinite amount of information at their fingertips, and they have no ability to access it.
We used to have to go to Encyclopedia Britannica to learn to
Yeah.
get information on shit.
Oh, it was, you had to put the effort in so you retain the information. These days they just go, what does this mean? And then they look at Wikipedia and think that that's gospel truth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh my God. Yeah.
There was one last thing I just wanted to wrap up on that, if I may. Constantly people complain we want cheaper games. Check out the indies and AA. Constantly people complain we want shorter games. Again, check out the indies and AAs. Constantly they complain that there's just not enough quality in gaming. Go and check out indies and AAs. There's no magic. Check out indies and AAs. There's no this, there's no that, there's no joy, there's no fun. And then when you call them out on it, all they do is say, I'm just talking about the AAA space. Well, if that's the only place you're focused on, you're just going to be miserable your entire life. You keep asking for stuff, it's there. The fact that you're ignoring it is a you problem, not a industry problem. So pack your bat and ball up and piss off somewhere and stop complaining.
All right, Falky.
But the thing
Yeah,
is that Falky, it's not an industry problem with availability, but it will become an industry problem as those games will start to become scarce. Because if people aren't buying them, people are going to stop making them.
Exactly.
And that's probably the biggest problem that I see going forward. Over the next 10, 15, 20 years, gaming is going to change in a way that I've never thought that it would before. And we're going to see probably way less games from a triple play or triple A aspect. And we may see the death of double A games. If people don't start buying games and starting paying attention to some of these great games that aren't, coming in the AAA space, I fear for what the gaming industry is going to look like in 20 years.
Yeah, and to double down on that, because the first thing people will say is, like, oh, but Claire Obscure, and oh, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and like, okay, like again, those are the outliers, right? There's this handful of Halo games that each year, right, are in that AA and indie space. Somebody mentioned Balatro, like that break out.
Right.
But again, when you pull the market data behind that, what I'll point back to is like only like the top 7% of games or whatever on Steam like actually even break 100K. And if you understand what an average developer salary is, right, you understand that means the other 18,999 games that come out on Steam every year don't break even and aren't profitable if they have more than one developer. Because 100K is about enough to pay one developer's salary.
Right.
So yes, we are seeing a handful of games become successful, but the vast majority of the rest of the industry is still impacted by the fact that people aren't buying those games, right? And in fact, the other problem that it points at, right, and that I hate to say because I don't want to denigrate those games, is what does it take today in today's market with today's consumer for a AA or an indie game to become successful? I might argue that all it takes is the absence of AAA games, right? Because when AAA games aren't coming out, right, that's when there's the windows of opportunities for those games to break out. But those AAA games aren't coming out because of rising production costs and how long it takes, right, to turn those games around, and the problem people are having with managing their production pipelines. So that's not a good news story necessarily either.
Right.
What's the last AAA game to be to get mass awards though? Well, you think back the last couple of years, what's the AAA game that has absolutely swept all the major awards in not just like the game awards, but DICE and BAFTA and all the rest of it? You got to go back a few years to get one. Like Elden Ring, would we consider that a AAA game?
Yeah, Elden Ring, probably The Last of Us 2, Witcher 3. Those are probably like the most notable big AAA games.
Yep. And so far this year's Game of the Year and last year was the same. Most of the Game of the Year contenders aren't AAA games. So there's an undertone there of what we've just spent the last better part of half an hour talking about. There's an undertone there from a certain segment within the industry, but online social influencers, they're just looking for something to whinge about. And I completely agree with what all three of you gentlemen have just said. Get out there and buy them, or they won't exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we've talked about on this show. Just speak with your wallet. So all right, Falky, I want to go to you. This topic, PlayStation. You got that big smile on your face. PlayStation and well, it's interesting because they talked about their new strategy, if you will. Hold on a sec here.
I can't wait to hear you misquote this.
Hold on, I'm trying to pull this article up again.
While he's getting that for context, before we started the show, we spoke for 2 minutes, and he did touch on this, and it took me from 0 to 100 on the annoyance scale really quickly, just because of the topic. So I feel like I'm going to get baited for an explosion here.
Well, but this is reporting some of the stuff I'm reading, Falky. So PlayStation is shifting the strategy focus to monthly active users rather than just unit sales. All right, this is
if people could read an entire sentence, the world would be a much better place.
now two but Falky, to your point. Now, this is all per Sony CFO. Is it I'm pronouncing her last name? Lin Tao.
Lin Tao.
Lin Tao highlight.
Is it really?
Highlight that PlayStation had a peak of 124 million active users last quarter, with around half of them still on PlayStation 4. All right. But Falcon, but a lot of people did say, hey, you know what? This is their new shift is Mao, and Falcon, you're like, no. It's not Mao. Read between the lines. So go ahead, Falcon.
All right. So what they said, specifically, we will seek higher revenues and profits from PlayStation Plus and maximize ARPU, average revenue per user of PlayStation Store, through the personalization and pricing optimizations. They haven't said anything about a focus on MAU. They're saying they've still got a focus on ARPU. Now, yes, monthly active users is the denominator in that equation. However, you can crank up the top number being the revenue, and you can still drop off MAUs and still be in a better position. So this whole notion that someone's taken that and gone, oh, they're switching to look at MAUs because it's better than what they... No. They're saying that they're moving away from a focus on selling for consoles and looking at how much they can generate per user in terms of revenue getting out of it. We've been talking about this for the last 12 months as well on the show. They've got a finite amount that they know they're going to sell this console to, and they've still got a heap of PS4 owners and PS4 Pro owners out there, and now they've got this PC piece coming through. So their monthly active users is stable. It's over 120 million, but what they're trying to do is get more money out of those users. Now, can they do it with higher priced games? Good luck to them if they want to do that. But it's more the micro stuff, the penny pinching here and there. Can I get another $2 here, another $5 there? What can I keep saying this? How can they reach into your pocket and pull
as much money? Can I sell you a new peripheral device?
Yeah. How much can they get out of you? We saw this morning they're announcing that the Stars program is going to wrap up. That was costing them money, so they're obviously going to put it back into something else and try something different. Is it heavier discounts for long-term PS Plus users or subscribers, or is it an additional free monthly game to try and entice more people onto it, or what is it? There's something that's going to replace that, because they've said we want to generate more revenue per user. To do that, we've got to do something more personalized and give something to see the value in that. Simply just saying we need more monthly active users and we'll do whatever we can to crank that number up is actually a misunderstanding, or complete misunderstanding of what they've said. And it's said in the press conference as well. But it's also going in the opposite direction. This is the problem that Xbox has got. They boast about 500 million monthly active users. That's great. That means that your average revenue per user is in the toilet. And if they've stagnated their user base and flatline their revenue, which is actually gone, they have to finish doing the number work on it, but it looks like it's gone backwards with the three of them being combined, even after doing the eliminations piece, that they're actually no better off by adding more users. Was Sony's taken a different approach and going, well, we need to try and figure out how we can generate more revenue per user. We're not worried about mass production of getting users into the system. We want more money out of what we've got. And we're going to do it by offering more value. Well, it's great. Find a way of offering me more value. I'm more than happy for you to try that. It's still not going to get me to buy an $80, $70 game on day one, but I'll take something else. But yeah, to say that their focus is on MAUs, complete misread of what they said that they were going to do.
So they're not focusing on Mao then, Falky, is what you're saying.
Well, because again, instead they expect to see stable growth in revenue and profits from network businesses due to growth of monthly active users corresponding to the further and steady expansion of the install base. They're not focusing on selling. They're focusing on generating more revenue and profits through the user base. That doesn't mean that their focus is on increasing MAUs.
So
The focus is on revenue per user.
Yeah.
If they wanted to increase MAUs, they could say the PS5 Pro is now $250 cheaper and they would fly off the shelf. Would they actually make any money doing that? No.
But that's the misconception, I think, with people a lot of the times when they talk about MAU. And it's funny, like we've been saying this on this show, we say it on social media. It isn't MAU, it's ARPU. I think somebody actually asked us on the show what that meant, but anyhow, but no, I don't disagree with you. It's not about MAU as much as it is about average revenue per user. And what's interesting, the other thing came out is and you've talked about this in length, Falky, the financial discipline of Sony leadership. Really the financial discipline of tighter controls over the spending first party studios. I think that was something Hitoki was looking at, right? That
executed pretty well.
Yeah. So and you talked. What'd you say, B?
Say he ain't playing with them.
No, he's not. They are not messing around. And I think Falky, either you said something to me and Deem, or you tweeted something, but you talked about that Are we seeing some of the impact of that tightening down on spending?
Yep, you can see it in their cash flow. Not just the stabilization, but the massive improvement over the last 12 months in their cash flow and their bits and pieces. They're not stockpiling inventory where they don't need it. They're not spending, for lack of a better term, they're not pissing money up the wall on stuff they don't need. Yes, they've offloaded a heap of people. They've shut down some studios. They've consolidated a heap of other expenditure points in their technology and their overhead and corporate pieces. And they're about 50% of the way through what they're aiming to do in terms of their restructure. But because they've done that, they've managed to improve their operating cash flow. Their invested cash flow is still negative, but it is improving because they've had to borrow a heap of money to get through this live service stuff after having chewed into their profit margins so deeply. And the profit margin's nearly back to the point where they wanted it to. And they've still got more to do in terms of this. You've heard me say it before. The one thing Jim Ryan didn't do was get the consolidation of the three global areas when they went into one, was doing the back of house consolidation work and cutting out all that waste and repetitive task points. They're actually doing that now because you've got accountants in charge of the joint, not business, not operations managers. So, and they're carving it up. They've got the razors out big time and they're going through it with a fine-tooth comb and just carving it up, setting a standard. You've got to meet this return on investment or it's out. There's no point having it. We're not carrying it anymore. And that's been the thing that Sony's dealt with since inception. They can't afford, like other big companies in that top 10 space, they can't afford to have a couple of big misses and just walk out the other end and go, yeah, it's all good. They still can't afford to do that. They've got to have a high level of fiscal discipline and they can't have a heap of waste in it. So the fact that they've managed to carve all this out and stand up two new teams within the studios without setting up a new studio, might I add, they haven't got a new location for them. They've stuck them in places where they didn't have to spend more money to get them on deck. They're carving this thing up really well, and they've still got a long way to go.
So Falky, let me ask you a question, kind of back to ARPU, because someone in the live chat said that they are something about they can't be focused on MAU because they canceled a bunch of live service games. But ARPU really, I mean, like you said, it's kind of like pinching those pennies, right?
Yeah.
But it could also be. But my thought too, and you may have heard me chime in, is we're going to figure out how to sell you more things in the ecosystem, right? Yep. And I don't mean like services. I'm talking about hardware, and it goes back to when they released they announced the PlayStation Portal. I remember a lot of the response was, "Oh, who's this for?" But to me, it's like, no, it's for people in the Sony ecosystem. The DualSense. I think Logic brought up the DualSense earlier. I've always thought Sony kind of, at least the PlayStation, at least for me, operates very Apple-esque, in the selling of different things to their consumers, the people in the ecosystem. the Pulse 3D audio headsets. They came out with they come out like a pro version of the Pulse 3D audio headset. They came like a higher, yeah. So that the DualSense, the PlayStation 5 Pro, the PlayStation Portal, which according to Sony, I think this came out of this recent report. They said it's successful. They're happy with it. They're going to continue supporting the Portal. They released earbuds. I forget what the name of the earbuds are, but again, some of this stuff, when I think of ARPU, you say it also ties into just being able to sell more like hardware peripherals to people in the PlayStation ecosystem, and not just necessarily money off live service games, digital purchases, things like that, right?
Yep. Yeah, and it all comes back to that. It's the value perception. So this is the thing that irks me again. We've spent so much time today, and nearly every other conversation we have, we talk about perceived value of the individual. And what a lot of businesses will do is they just chuck a product up and go, here it is, have at it if you want it. Great. But there's no option to personalize that to a degree, or you get some of these quirky little things. And as again, we go, who's that for? It's for someone. If you're asking the question, it's not for you. But every individual consumer's got a different perception of value. Some want those earbuds because they don't like the over-the-head earphones. Others will take the over-the-head earphones because they don't like earbuds. But the fact that both are being offered at different price points with different different performance points on them is giving variability. But does Sony want to do that? Multiple price points and different versions of the same thing costs money to make. Do they want to do that? This is the stuff that they've got to balance out. In terms of like the Portal is a good example. It's saying how many portals are being sold. Well, no one really knows because it's being counted as a peripheral, not as a console. But there's some estimates saying that 4% of PS5 owners have got a PlayStation Portal. Well, that's a pretty decent number. But who's it for? Well, I know myself and a lot of friends that I have in gaming, we use it to sit on the couch next to our significant others when they're watching TV, so we can be in close proximity to them, but doing our own thing. And that's what I use it for. Others use it to go take it with them when they go traveling. There's multiple different reasons and opportunities to use one device. And if that is something that they continue to invest in, how many different ways can you use this one SKU, this one device? That's where they'll start to really generate some increases there. The high end, like the DualSense Edge and the Pulse, the Elite headphones and all the rest of that sort of stuff, those are for a specific part of the market. But they sell okay, they sell fine. But if you just want the normal stuff, you still get the normal stuff. But there's not 15 different versions of this thing at multiple price points. So if they're going to expand in that respect, is what you're saying with the peripherals, the hardware, and all the rest of it, that's an option. But I think it's a limited option that they don't have the capacity to make mountains of different things. But if they can figure out how to get something out there which works in multiple different ways and multiple people will see it and take the option, then great. I still think it's more in the software area and some of that curated game lists and all that sort of stuff, or offering discounts for PS Plus members and heavier discounts for PS Plus members and that sort of stuff, which will get them onto the subscription. That's where they're going to generate more. The more people they can get onto the PS Plus subscription at the higher level rather than the base level, that's an increase in ARPU because they've got more money out of you and they've got to offer something to get that. So I feel like there may be some hardware tie-in. We've seen the Crunchyroll tie-in. We've seen the Sony movies streaming tie-in. There might be other ones coming down the pipeline. We don't know. But there's opportunities up and down the line for it. There is one aspect of it though that I think really needs to be considered, and that is how many unique users there are versus what they're reporting as their monthly active users. And it comes down to there's no conformity or standard on how they do this. Sony highlights how they calculate their monthly active users is the number of unique accounts connected to the PlayStation Network in the last month of that quarter. So it's always March, June, September, December. So you're always going to get a spike in December, and you're always going to get a spike in June. But you get a spike in December and you get a spike in June. So, but that's not saying that's the entirety of the number of users that they have. That's just who was plugged in at the end of on that last month of the quarter of unique accounts. Now, there might be multiple individuals that have, one individual might have multiple accounts, multiple individuals might be using one account. But the getting into the nuts and bolts around that, PlayStation and Sony will have the data, and they will be able to figure out how many different users are on a console, how many different users there are that aren't connecting to the PSN, that are on the old PS4 Pros. Like they say, 50% of PS5 owners didn't own a PS4. So there's at least 50-something million still, or 60 million if you want to go that far, hanging around in the PS4 area that haven't upgraded yet. But they're still connecting in as part of those monthly active users that are the denominator for that average revenue per user. Getting them off the 4 and onto the 5 is going to have a massive bump for them to begin with. Once they upgrade to the 5 and then they can access all the additional stuff, there's just an economy of scale increase straight away. So that might be another focus point if someone's on a 4, getting them on the 5. They've already said, we're not going to give you any PS4 games anymore in your free games for PlayStation Plus. That's done. We're PS5 games only from this point onwards. And that's an enticement. It's a reward for being on the PS5. Is that going to shift people off the 4 on the 5? Probably not. But it's going to make them think about it a bit more. And like we've had conversations at length. GTA 6 gets pushed out to next year. That thing's going to move a massive amount of consoles. And there will be people who are waiting for that to jump forward. But if NBA 2K and Madden, all the rest of them had a jump forward in the performance, and you needed a PS5 or PS5 Pro to benefit from it, and anyone playing online on a PS4 was struggling, that's how you get those ones to move up. So what can PlayStation do to entice them to upgrade? And again, yes, it's in the hardware space, but then there's peripherals that go along with it. So that's the sort of stuff that they're thinking about. And that's the sort of engagement that, if they pull down the STARS program and they take something else away from us, but they're able to attract, 40 million more people up onto a PS5, great. That's big numbers. And there's a massive jump. And it won't move the MAU, but that'll move the revenue. And that's what I say before. MAU is a part of it. It's not the focus point.
Now, thank you for that insight there, Falky. I wish I would have had. We should have gone live when we talked about this because you were a little fired up.
I was mad, but Twitter will demonetize you if I repeat what I said at the start.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
but,
just side note,
yeah,
if the 4%, let's say round numbers, 4% of PlayStation 5 owners have picked up a PlayStation Portal, that puts it at just over 3 million units sold. The Steam Deck has only just gone past 4 million units. Who's it for?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, no, fair. I mean, yeah, no, it's food for thought. Absolutely. So, well, gentlemen, it is 11:16 here in the U.S. Falky. I know it's Thursday over there.
Yep. 1:16 p.m. afternoon.
I tell you, man, I wish
it's still raining and miserable outside. I wanted to go out and mow the lawn this afternoon, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's actually raining here today too, as well. So, but Falky, I want to thank you again for joining us. I know you were literally across the world, like across the planet Earth, southern hemisphere, planet Earth.
Yep.
It's Thursday over there. It's always amazing me. You're what?
14 hours
14 hours
Yep.
ahead of us. Excuse me. But no, excuse me. I'm yawning here because I'm dead tired. Work's been crazy. Falky, I got to talk to you more about what we talked about before we went live about work and yeah, it's to get your perspective on things. We talked about one of the things we talked about today was reducing the cost to make a hire, which I thought was kind of Interesting. To me, that means you might be letting go of people who help you do that hiring. And
Yeah.
there's probably some duplication of efforts that are happening. So when you talked about Sony doing that, I think there's some there's a little bit too much of there's some things that probably need to be more centralized.
When you spend more money on the governance than you do on the actual development and producing the product of your saleable product, something has gone wrong.
Yeah, we got to talk offline though. I'm just because that came up today, and I was kind of like, I was like, I need to talk about. That's funny. I was just thinking about because I knew you were going to be on the show today. I was like, I need to talk to Falky about this because to me, it screams like, yeah, we have some duplication of work here, efforts that needs to be cut out. And there could be, they didn't say it, a reduction of headcount, but I think that's ultimately what that leads to. That might not be the only thing, but I think that's part of it. So.
Yeah, well, reduction of headcount is as clearly evident in the Sony financials. Reduction of headcount gets you a cash flow injection immediately. It's the fastest way to turn your cash flow around, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I also think that means that we probably are going to, and I know this is not a topic on the show, but just give a little bit of what I want to talk to you about. I also think that points to us probably using more contingent workforce labor than hiring traditional FTEs.
Yep.
So
absolutely,
because that's cheaper. Yeah, that's cheaper. Yeah. So anyhow,
the same conversation at my own work at the moment. So
yeah. But anyhow, Falky, thank you again for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy, and again, it's Thursday over there. We made it to, at least we know that humanity made it to Thursday. So thank you again, Falky.
Yep, no worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Also want to give a big thank you to everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us this evening. Please do me a favor, hit that like button, do the YouTube thing, like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you learn when we go live. Also want to give a big shout out to B Money, who was able to join us tonight. B, hey man, great seeing you. Great having you back on, man. Always a pleasure talking video games with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I was able to make it, and great conversation as always. And hopefully I'll be over on the show a lot more often. But my son is graduating, and we're preparing.
Wait, what did you say? Your son's graduating?
Yeah. My oldest son
already.
Yes, sir.
Oh, B, that's what? That's crazy. Congrats, man.
Yeah, so a lot of life stuff going on, and my other son we've been going on a lot of college visits for football, and just a lot of stuff is going on in life, that can't really be around on social media and in the gaming space as much as I like to, but just taking it one day at a time, man, and enjoying every moment of it. So like I said, hopefully, in the next few weeks or so, things are kind of wind down for me as the boys get into school and we kind of make some choices. And maybe you'll see me around more often. So
yeah, no, definitely, man. Yeah, no, and I hey, look, man, I get it with the family stuff and sports, kids, activities. I get it. I mean, my kids aren't as old, but they're involved in sports, and I feel like I'm running around a lot during the week,
Oh yeah.
And I'm not on social media as much because work has kept me really busy, and stuff with the kids has kept me busy. So I get it, man. I get it. But that's awesome. Congratulations to your son, and be interested, man, offline if what schools he's looking at too. That'd be cool to you're talking about football, so I'm curious.
Yeah.
But B, again, great having you back on, man. Look forward to having you back on again when you can in the near future, especially with Summer Games Fest coming up next month. So should have a lot to talk about next month as relates to that particular show. So also want to give a big shout out to Jensen. Jensen, I know you're busy running a $1 trillion corporation. But
hey, Jensen,
doing...
fix those GPUs, man. How about that? That's what you can do.
They're scary. They're scary.
I want a bigger dividend. Give me some more money.
I was very worried that I was gonna be left with a $4 figure piece of furniture over here this weekend. I was sweating bullets.
Oh,
are you talking about when you were troubleshooting?
Yeah.
What was it you do with Doom?
No, I didn't. I hadn't even gotten to that point. I bought an RTX 5080, and the first PC that I tried to install it in, it did not work. So I fought it for 24 hours. And I thought for a large chunk of that I was experiencing a driver problem. It turned out it was a very rare instance where a GPU can be incompatible with a motherboard, because of conflicts in the motherboard's BIOS and the GPU's VMOS, I think it is. So it just goes to show, like, I've been building PCs for 26 years now, but some problems are so rare that it's not like in 26 years of building PCs. And I build, except for a hiatus from 2012 to 2016 where I didn't build any PCs. I generally build at least one a year, if not two, sometimes three, all depending, either a completely new build or just a major overhaul. But it just goes to show that, like, in all that time with all those PCs builds, there could still be problems that you just will have never seen. And so you don't know exactly what you're looking at when you troubleshoot it. So, but yeah, it all turned out okay.
Oh man, that's well, I'm glad it turned out okay. I would have been sweating bullets, man. That's kind of scary. So
yeah, especially when the resolution of it was spending another 4 figures to get more parts.
Oh, that's right. I remember you saying you were going to go out and buy some like what, new CPU?
Yeah, because I was thinking what I was going to have to do was buy a new CPU motherboard and cooler, and completely tear down and rebuild that PC, which had not been part of my plan. I'm not planning on doing any builds. I didn't do any builds last year. I'm not planning on doing any this year. So I really didn't want to have to donkey kick and do an emergent build like that. Or like I said, or spend the extra money beyond just the GPU, to procure parts. So, but like I said, I found a resolution and it all worked out.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear, man. Happy it worked out. And I meant to ask you earlier, Logic. I know you played Doom, the new Doom. How's that going so far? What are your thoughts?
Oh man, it's going great. It's just one of those. I don't know how to describe it. It's like if you owned a sports car, and then didn't own a sports car, and then like bought a sports car again after like years of not having it, or like if you grew up driving a stick shift and then don't drive a stick shift car for years and then buy another. It's just giddy, like childish, like fun. Like you get to do some things that you have not been the norm in Doom games before.
Like anything in like early on, particular, like I heard you talk about pairing and stuff like that. And
well, there's pairing in the game. There's you do get. It's a known fact because I think they said it in the showcase, or maybe they demoed it. But you do get to like get in a mech that is like a
yes, the giant mech. I saw it. Yeah,
Gundam Robotech size mech. Like you climb into the head is where the pilot seat is. So you fight like giant demons.
So I'm sorry, Logic. Real quick, when I saw that, I was sold. I was like, it's not even a question whether I'm going to play this game or not. Like getting on and the dragon, which gave me the Panzer Dragon vibes. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess maybe I didn't watch those. So I didn't want to mention the dragon because I thought that would be a spoiler. But yes,
they showed that. It's like what those were like the shield, the dragon, and the mech were like the big three things.
And those levels are pretty close together. Like so you pilot the mech one level, and then it's like 2 levels later you get into the dragon. And there's kind of like a big lead up to those. It's like you do a whole level to get to that point, and then the level ends showing you kind of walking into the space or with like some type of voice track reference to Yeah, like before you ride the dragon, like the level before that you play where you have to fight to get to the dragon avium. You know, you hear like one of the, like it's a like female general or something say, you know, prepare the Slayer's dragon, and you're just like, oh,
Oh, that's just that sounds badass. Prepare the Slayer's dragon. I love it.
So yeah, and so yeah, it's pretty awesome.
All right. You know, I like I said, I wanted to play it when it came out, but I just couldn't resist the idea of I had to play Expedition 33 again, and I actually went out and bought it this time. I bought a copy on PlayStation because I played it through Game Pass, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do a second playthrough, but this time I'm going to do it on PlayStation. Went out, spent the $50, and you know, quote unquote, support the devs, and I am enjoying it. This game Baldur's Gate 3 is my game of the gen, but this might end up being my game of the gen. I'm enjoying the second playthrough even more so than the first, which is crazy. Actually, it's not crazy because part of that's because I'm discovering new areas that I didn't, just through doing some more exploration that I missed the first time. And, you know, and now that I'm more experienced with Pictos and, you know, building my characters, like I'm having a blast.
Yeah, on Doom the Dark Ages, I would say if you're on PC, if you're on an RTX 4000 or 5000 series card, you'll be very happy. Very performant game. You know, a 4000 series card, I'm seeing you know, a float from, you know, high 130s up to 160 frames per second. If you're on a 5000 series card, I mean, on an RTX 5080, I'm just seeing, you know, my frames are pegged at whatever the refresh rate limiter, you know, is for the monitor that I'm on. So, you know, it's at, you know, 141, 144 frames per second, or 161, 165, depending on what monitor I'm on. If you're on a 3000 series card, I think you're gonna encounter problems because the game does have ray tracing, and at least at launch there was no way to turn ray tracing off. So, you know, there's that. But like I said, if you're on a current gen or last gen GPU, you'll be very happy with the performance on PC for Doom the Dark Ages.
So I'm basically screwed if I play this in my 30 series.
Okay, see you.
All right, Falky. See you, man.
Thank you again. Later.
Yep, see you. So yeah. I'm in trouble if I'm playing this on my 30 series.
I haven't tested it on my 3080 Ti yet. I would assume that there's a way to work around it. The only data point I have is I do have one of the cast members on E2KG who is on a 30.
I think
70.
He's on a
3070. He's not on a 3070 Ti. He might.
I thought he was on a Ti. No.
Maybe he is.
You guys were talking about it on the show. So
yeah, I mean those are 8GB cards, so you know they're gonna hit limits. But yeah, I also don't know what. I mean, when I test it on my 3080 Ti is hooked up to a 1080p screen now, so I may not run into the issue. He might be on a 1440p screen. He might be running into issues with it at higher res, but I mean, otherwise in general, it's just a great game. Like kind of falls in the middle between. If you didn't like Doom Eternal, it falls in the middle between Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. So I think it is much closer to the Doom 2016 end of the spectrum and kind of borrows things from Doom Eternal that were good, without, you know, all of the things that maybe weren't great about Doom Eternal.
All right, man. I just that mech and fire. What is get the Slayer's dragon ready? What was it again? Like just.
Yeah, she was like, prepare the Slayer's dragon.
Oh yeah, that's badass. I just yeah, I'm gonna have to play it this weekend. Actually, no, I can't this week. I'm gonna be out of town, but yeah. Anyhow, all right, Logic. I don't know if you want to be found, but if you do, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can catch me on the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time.
All right, man. And B, I didn't ask if you want to be found on social media. I'm not sure, but if you do, let me know they can find you. I think we may have lost B. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out this evening, watching the show. We'll be back next week. Everyone have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.